Mr. Transformers 96 here with another ranking video for Marvel Legends. This time it is the X-Men series Apocalypse Build-A-Figure Wave. So this is quite exciting. I haven't done a ranking in quite some time, and that's because my idea of the Marvel Legends in general has kind of shifted. I used to be kind of more of a completist where I just buy all the waves and that was the end of it. Now I tend to be a little bit more strategic about how I do it. I tend to only buy waves that I really want the Build-A-Figure for, and then when I do that, I don't just buy all the figures. I kind of try to get some of the Build-A-Figure pieces on a good price and not get the figures and things like that. So that's why I haven't been doing them lately. I've had a lot of people ask me about it. It's really just because I don't really want all the waves with all the figures, to be honest. And I finally just clicked that it's a little ridiculous for me to be buying the entire wave if I really just want the Build-A-Figure. So I decided to kind of shift my thinking. However, with this wave, although I did not get them all, I did get the majority of them, and I decided it was enough to do a ranking video on it, especially since you guys enjoy my rankings. So I did purchase Sabretooth, Psylocke, Magneto, Storm, and Multiple Man, and of course I did purchase the Build-A-Figure pieces to complete Apocalypse. So this Marvel Legends ranking video is going to be the 5 figures I actually picked up, and I'm also going to include the Build-A-Figure on my ranking. That's something that I don't usually do, but I decided to do it on this one. However, I am going to take the fact that he is a Build-A-Figure into consideration, so I'm not just going to compare him straight up against the rest of them. He should obviously be much better than them because he is a Build-A-Figure. So that's how I'm going to go about this. Personally, I was really excited for all these figures. These are ones that I absolutely had to get. None of them I was like, okay, skipping for the Build-A-Figure piece. These 5 figures I absolutely wanted for sure. With Wolverine looked nice, and I was willing to buy him. I wanted him, but not enough that I would buy him even if I could get the Build-A-Figure piece for very cheap. And I was able to get his Build-A-Figure piece for $6. That shipped $6. So I decided it was worth it just to buy the piece and skip the $20 figure, you know. Even though the figure did look nice. Gladiator is the only figure of the wave that I really didn't want whatsoever, just because I'm not a fan of the character. So I had no regrets skipping him, and I just bought his Build-A-Figure piece. But yeah, overall, let's get started ranking the wave here from the Marvel Legends X-Men series Apocalypse Wave. Let's get started. So in last place, I'm going to put Sabretooth. Again, they're all really nice, so even last place isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. But this one's a little underwhelming to me, and character-wise, he's probably the one that I was most looking forward to, just because I'm a big fan of Brotherhood of Evil Mutant characters. He's a classic member of that, and the figure, I like the head sculpt a lot. There's some really cool details, especially in his hair. His hands are cool. The mane I find a little underwhelming, and then the rest of the figures are pretty standard mold. I'm annoyed a little bit that his leg kind of bends out to the side like this. That happens with with Marvel Legends here, you know, every now and then, but it is still annoying nonetheless. So not a terrible figure by any means, but a little underwhelming. Next up, I'm going to go with Multiple Man. This is quite a good figure. I do like it. It uses kind of the jacket from the classic Nick Fury figure, but with the updated arms to allow him to have like arms that like lay a little closer to his body, and that are in proper scale with the rest of him bulk-wise. I do like the fact that he comes with extra heads. That's very cool. My only issue is that the body is a little plain. Now, the costume in the comics is plain, so they didn't do anything wrong by making it plain, but it makes it a little less than some of the others. Like, literally, I'm having to really nitpick to define this order, because all the figures on it are pretty good, and they're pretty good, like, on par with each other. Like, it's really hard to define them, in my opinion. But overall, I think that this is a nice figure, but I think the others I like slightly more. In 4th place, I'm putting the Build-A-Figure being Apocalypse. This overall is a nice figure, but when you do take into consideration that it is a Build-A-Figure, I do definitely have to knock it down a bit. It's towards the middle, but a little bit closer to the bottom. I just think that there's some aspects to it that aren't that great. I will say I don't really like the way that they did the hoses, and then his size isn't that large. He obviously, you know, shifts in size in the comics, so they had a lot of range as to what size they could do, but I think something a little bigger than this would have been appropriate. And I find that it's lacking a little bit on definition. There's not much shading at all on him, especially in the face. It could have used that. That's like an important spot for it, and it doesn't really have it. Overall, it's a nice figure, but it's nothing super special, and for a Build-A-Figure, it really should kind of be super special. So overall, definitely deserving kind of that mid to lower range spot on this list. Taking the third spot, I'm going to have to put Storm. Overall, this is quite a nice Storm figure. It's not the Storm that I wouldn't have necessarily preferred, the version of her, but figure-wise, I think it's quite nice. It's one of the few figures on this list that actually has some unique sculpted parts other than the Build-A-Figure, but the torso, if I'm not mistaken, is completely uniquely sculpted. And then the boots, I haven't seen the boots sculpted like that on anybody else. The upper legs, the arms, those are, of course, reused pieces, but I do enjoy the addition, the newly sculpted editions. I think that they fit quite nicely. And then the hands, expression-wise, do look quite cool. Not a figure that I particularly had a bunch of fun with, but, it's mainly because of the version of the Storm. It's not a Storm that I particularly love, but overall, I think that the figure looks really nice, and definitely deserving a decent spot on this list. In second place, I'm going to put Psylocke. This figure, although lacking in newly sculpted pieces on the figure herself, because the figure itself is your standard woman body sculpt, it's just been painted over it, of course. I can't really fault it because her costume in the comics is very much like that. It's all very flat. There doesn't need to be definition on it or anything. The face sculpt is quite nice, but what really kind of boosts this one for me personally is the accessories. I do really like her accessories. I like the kind of neon translucent pink that they take on. I think that looks really cool. I was also a big fan of the fact that you can take the blast effect piece off of the sword. It actually, you can choose to put it on the sword or off, which gives the sword a different look, and you can use that blast effect piece to put on the actual blast effect itself to extend it. There's just a lot you can do with it, and although it's a somewhat plain figure, because of the accessories, I actually had quite a lot of fun with this one. I did quite a few poses and actually really enjoyed it. So personally, I did put this a little higher on my list than some of the others, but again, all of these are very close, so it was very difficult to determine the order. In first place, I decided to put Magneto. So what really made me put him at first place and above some of these others is the accessories. That's going to be the biggest one. I do love the fact that he comes with both versions of his head. He comes with multiple hands, and he comes with metal, moving, effect pieces essentially. So there's just a lot of fun stuff you can do. The boots I find quite unique. I'm not sure if they've been reused before. I feel like they have, but I personally don't know if I own the figure that they've been used on. The cape itself is quite neat, and I really enjoyed the fact that they expressed his power through a translucent purple. Purple is my favorite color, and I think that it was a fun thing that they did to really show him using power, which was interesting. I actually liked it quite a bit. The costume itself, I would have much preferred a more classic version of Magneto, of course, but I do, they've already done it in the past, so I understand why they went with this version of his costume. Not my first choice, but I still get it. And overall, I thought that the figure was quite nice. I enjoyed it. I had fun posing it. I enjoyed the multiple options that the accessories give you. And overall, it was quite a fun figure. But again, really, practically anybody on this list could have been interchanged for number one, to be perfectly honest. These are all really solid figures. But I did decide to put Magneto at number one, and I do stick by that decision. So overall, that's how I would rank the wave, or at least the figures that I did purchase within the wave. This is a tremendous wave in my opinion, especially the figures that I picked up. I really enjoyed all of these. Gladiator is really the only one that I could care less about, and it's more that I could care less about his character. Other than that, the series not only has a bunch of characters that I enjoy, but they have, but the figures themselves actually look good as well. Because again, Wolverine I would have purchased had I not been able to get the Build-A-Figure piece for so cheap. It wasn't a figure that I didn't want. It was just a figure that I could live with without. But all the rest of these I specifically wanted. The rest of these, even if I could get their Build-A-Figure pieces cheap, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to actually pick up the figure and the piece, which nowadays, that doesn't happen too often. Usually there's only about 2 figures per wave that I really can't live without, and then the rest I'm really just wanting the Build-A-Figure pieces for, and I can kind of go either way. But with this assortment, like I said, 5 of these I wanted 100%. One of them I could live without, but did want, and then one of them I didn't want. So overall, that's a really good ratio for the set itself. And then the Build-A-Figure is quite nice. It's nothing mind-blowing, and won't blow your socks off, but it's a nice Build-A-Figure, and character-wise, it's very cool. And just in general, the X-Men has just a great supply of characters, and I do enjoy the characters that have been placed in this wave. So overall, quite a nice wave, and again, a great assortment of characters. Really one of my toughest times making a list. Usually on a list I know what my number one is, and I know what my least favorite is off the bat, and then coming up with the middle is kind of difficult. But with this one, the hardest thing was to find my least and to find the best, because these are really, they're solid figures and they're solid on par with each other. None of them are absolutely mind-blowing, but none of them are terrible, and then there's none that are even just like mid-range. These are all like between mid-range and great, you know, so they're all nice figures. So there, that's my thoughts, and that's my ranking of the Marvel Legends X-Men series Apocalypse Build-A-Figure Wave assortment of figures. So let me know what you guys think of my ranking. I'd love to hear what you guys would rank them as, and thanks so much for watching.